I never thought I'd become the kind of person who finds excuses to hang around a construction site, but there I was for the third day in a row, pretending I needed to check on the renovation progress in my apartment building. The truth was simpler and more embarrassing than that. I wanted to watch him work. His name was Luca, and he'd been hired to restore the original woodwork in our historic building. I'm Mason, by the way, and I'd lived in apartment 4B for 2 years without paying much attention to the ongoing restoration project. Then Luca showed up with his tool belt and his careful hands, and this way of looking at wood like it was something precious. And suddenly, I cared very much about historic preservation. The first time I saw him, I was coming home from my graphic design job, still wearing my button-down and carrying my laptop bag. He was kneeling in the hallway outside my apartment, running his fingers along the baseboard trim with this expression of complete concentration. His dark hair fell forward over his forehead, and there was sawdust caught in his beard. He had on a faded blue Henley with the sleeves pushed up, and I could see the muscles in his forearms flex as he worked a piece of damaged molding free from the wall. I should have just walked past him. Instead, I stopped and watched, and he must have sensed me there because he looked up. His eyes were this warm brown color, like honey in sunlight, and when he smiled at me, something in my chest did this complicated flip that I wasn't ready to examine too closely. "Sorry," he said, gesturing at his tools spread across the hallway. "I can move this if you need to get by." "No, it's fine," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. "What are you working on?" He sat back on his heels, and I watched his face light up in a way that made him look younger, more open. "This molding is original to the building, from 1924. Someone painted over it about 40 times, but underneath it's solid walnut. Look." He held up the piece he'd removed, and I stepped closer without thinking. "See how tight the grain is? They don't make wood like this anymore. This tree was probably 100 years old when they cut it down." I didn't know anything about wood grain, but I leaned in to look because it meant being closer to him. He smelled like sawdust and something else, something clean and warm that might have been his soap or just him. "That's amazing," I said, and I meant it, though I wasn't entirely sure if I was talking about the wood or the way his hands cradled it like something alive. "I know, right?" He grinned at me, and I felt that flip in my chest again, stronger this time. Most people think I'm crazy for getting excited about old trim, but there's something about working with materials that have this much history. Like, someone cut this wood almost 100 years ago, and if I do my job right, it'll be here for another 100. That was the conversation that started it all. I introduced myself. He told me his name, and then I went into my apartment and stood in my kitchen for 10 minutes, trying to figure out what the hell had just happened to me. I'd had crushes before, obviously. I'd dated women in college, had a few relationships that fizzled out when I couldn't quite make myself feel what I thought I should feel. I'd even had moments of wondering, late at night when I couldn't sleep, if maybe I'd been looking in the wrong direction all along. But I'd never felt anything like this immediate pull toward someone, this desire to be near them that felt almost physical. The next morning, I left for work earlier than usual and found him already in the hallway, setting up for the day. "Morning," he said, glancing up with that same easy smile. "You're up early." "Yeah, big project at work," I lied. The truth was, I'd barely slept, too busy thinking about honey-colored eyes and capable hands and the way he talked about his work like it mattered. "How's the restoration going?" "Good. Slow, but good." He stood up, brushing sawdust off his jeans. "I'm about to start on the staircase trim today. Original oak with these hand-carved corner blocks. Want to see?" I should have said no. I should have gone to work. Instead, I followed him down to the main staircase, and he showed me the carved wooden blocks at each corner where the banister met the steps. They were beautiful, these little geometric patterns cut into the wood with precise, delicate detail. But mostly, I was watching his hands as he traced the patterns, the way his fingers moved with such care and attention. "Someone made these by hand," he said softly. Can you imagine? Sitting there with a chisel and a mallet, carving the same pattern over and over, making sure each one matched. That kind of craftsmanship, that patience. We've lost that. You have it, I said, and he looked at me with a surprised expression that made me realize I'd said something more revealing than I'd intended. I mean, you obviously care about the details, the craftsmanship. Thanks, he said, and there was something in his voice, something warm and a little uncertain, that made me wonder if he felt it too, this strange electricity in the air between us. That means a lot, actually. Most people just want things done fast and cheap. I was definitely going to be late for work, but I didn't care. We stood there on the stairs, close enough that I could have reached out and touched him and talked about nothing and everything. He told me how he'd learned carpentry from his grandfather, how he'd studied furniture, making an art school before realizing his real passion was restoration. I told him about my design work, how I'd always loved the intersection of old and new, historic buildings with modern interiors. When I finally left, an hour late, I felt like I was walking on air, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that I was in trouble. Because this wasn't just attraction, this was something deeper, something that scared me because I'd never felt it before and didn't know what to do with it. That afternoon I did something I'd never done before. I took a long lunch and went to a bookstore, and I found myself in the LGBTQ section, running my fingers along the spines of books about coming out and discovering yourself and falling in love with someone who makes you question everything you thought you knew about who you are. I didn't buy anything. I wasn't ready for that. But I stood there for a long time, letting myself acknowledge what I'd been trying not to think about all day. I was attracted to Luca. More than attracted. I wanted to know everything about him. I wanted to hear him talk about wood grain and craftsmanship forever. I wanted to know what it would feel like to touch him, to be touched by him, and that meant I had to confront something about myself that I'd been avoiding for a very long time. When I got home that evening, Luca was still working. The hallway smelled like fresh-cut wood and the lemon oil he used to clean the restored pieces. He was on his knees again, fitting a section of baseboard into place, and he didn't hear me approach. I stood there and watched him work, the careful way he measured twice before cutting, the gentle pressure he applied to test if the piece fit correctly, the small, satisfied nod he gave when everything aligned perfectly. "You're still here," I said, and he startled, looking up with a smile that made my heart race. "Yeah, I got caught up. This section was trickier than I expected." He sat back, wiping his forehead with his arm. "But I think I've got it now. Want to see?" I did. I always wanted to see. I knelt down next to him, close enough that our shoulders almost touched, and he showed me how the new piece matched the old, how he duplicated the profile exactly using a combination of modern tools and hand planing. His enthusiasm was contagious, but more than that, it was beautiful. He was beautiful in his element like this, talking about something he loved. "You really love this," I said. And it wasn't a question. "I do." He turned to look at me, and we were very close now. Close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. "Is that weird?" "No," I said quietly. "It's amazing. I wish I felt that way about my work." "You don't love design?" "I like it. But it's not the same. You talk about this stuff like it's alive, like it matters on some fundamental level. I make websites look pretty. It's not the same." "Hey," he said, and his voice was gentle. "Making things beautiful matters too. We need beauty in the world. We need people who care about how things look and feel." The way he said it, looking right at me, made me feel seen in a way I hadn't experienced before. Like he understood something about me that I barely understood about myself. We stayed there, kneeling on the floor in the hallway, and neither of us moved away. The moment stretched out, charged with something unspoken, until finally I forced myself to stand up. "I should let you finish," I said. "Yeah," he said. but he sounded reluctant. "Hey, Mason. Thanks for caring about this stuff. It's nice to have someone to talk to about it." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd said my name, the way we'd looked at each other. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, and I let myself admit it fully for the first time. I was falling for him. Maybe I'd already fallen. And I had no idea what to do about it because I'd never done this before, never let myself want a man this way, never been this vulnerable. The next day was Saturday, and I didn't have to work. I told myself I wouldn't go looking for him, that I'd give myself space to think. But around 10 in the morning, I heard sounds from the hallway and found myself opening my door. Luca was there, working on the crown molding near the ceiling, standing on a ladder with his arms raised over his head. His shirt had ridden up, exposing a strip of skin above his jeans, and I had to look away before he caught me staring. "You work weekends too?" I asked. He looked down at me, smiling. "Only when I'm excited about a project. Plus, it's quieter on weekends, easier to concentrate." He climbed down the ladder, landing lightly next to me. "What about you? No weekend plans?" "Not really. I was just going to catch up on some freelance work." "That sounds boring." He said it teasingly, and there was something playful in his expression that I hadn't seen before. "You should take a break. Go do something fun." "Like what?" "I don't know. What do you do for fun?" It was such a simple question, but I realized I didn't have a good answer. I worked, I went home, I watched Netflix. I occasionally went out with co-workers for drinks. My life was small and safe and carefully controlled. "I guess I don't do much," I admitted. "Well, that's a crime." He wiped his hands on his jeans. "Tell you what, I'm about to take a lunch break. There's this amazing sandwich place a few blocks away. Come with me. My treat. Call it payment for being such a good audience while I nerd out about carpentry." I should have said no. This was already getting complicated, and spending more time with him would only make it worse. But I wanted to. God, I wanted to so badly. "Okay," I said. "Let me grab my wallet." "I said my treat," he called after me, and I felt that flip in my chest again, the one that was becoming dangerously familiar. We walked to the sandwich place together, and it felt significant somehow, being outside the building with him, moving through the world side by side. He talked about the neighborhood, pointing out architectural details I'd never noticed, the corbels under the eaves of an old building, the way the brickwork on a corner store showed where an addition had been built decades after the original structure. He saw the city differently than I did, as layers of history and craftsmanship, and I loved listening to him explain it. At the sandwich place, we ordered and found a small table by the window. The autumn sunlight came through the glass and lit up his face, and I had to work hard to focus on the conversation instead of just staring at him. We talked about everything. His family, my family, his time in art school, my time studying design, the projects we'd loved, the ones we'd hated. It was easy, natural, like we'd known each other for years instead of days. "Can I ask you something?" he said, and there was a shift in his tone, something more serious. "And you can totally tell me to mind my own business." "Okay," I said, my heart suddenly beating faster. "Are you seeing anyone?" The question hung in the air between us. I could have deflected, could have given a vague answer. Instead, I met his eyes and said, "No. Are you?" "No." He held my gaze, and I saw something there, a vulnerability that matched my own. "I was just curious. You seem like the kind of person who'd have someone." "What kind of person is that?" "I don't know. Kind, thoughtful, easy to talk to." He paused. "Handsome." The word landed between us like a stone dropped in still water, ripples spreading out in every direction. My breath caught, and I didn't know what to say. He just called me handsome. He'd asked if I was single. This was happening, whatever this was, and I felt terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. "Thanks," I finally managed. You too. I mean, you're easy to talk to, and the other things. His smile was slow and warm, and I knew he understood what I was really saying, what I couldn't quite make myself say directly. Good to know, he said softly. We finished our sandwiches, and the conversation shifted to safer topics, but something had changed. There was an acknowledgement now, an understanding that we both felt this pull, this connection. Walking back to the building, our hands brushed accidentally, and neither of us pulled away. It was the smallest touch, barely anything, but it felt enormous. That night, I did more research. I read articles and blog posts and forum threads about coming out later in life, about discovering your sexuality, about falling for someone who makes you question everything. I read stories from other people who'd been where I was, scared and confused and exhilarated. And slowly, I started to accept it. I was attracted to men. To Luca specifically. Yes, but maybe to men in general. And that was okay. It didn't change who I was. It just meant I finally understood myself better. Over the next week, I found more and more excuses to be around while Luca worked. I started working from home some afternoons, leaving my door open so I could hear him in the hallway. He started explaining what he was doing without me even asking, walking me through the process of stripping paint from old wood, showing me the different tools he used and why, teaching me to say what he saw when he looked at a piece of architectural detail. And I realized he was doing it on purpose, finding reasons to keep me there, to extend our conversations. You know, he said one afternoon, you're welcome to actually help if you want. I could use an extra pair of hands. I don't know anything about carpentry, I protested. So, I'll teach you. Come on, it'll be fun. That's how I ended up spending my evenings learning to sand wood and apply finish, working beside Luca in the hallway while he guided my hands, showed me the right pressure to use, the right angle. Every touch felt electric. Every moment of standing close together made my pulse race. And I could tell he felt it too, the way he'd let his hand linger on mine a second too long, the way he'd look at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. One night, we were working late on a particularly stubborn piece of trim. Everyone else in the building had gone to bed, and it was just us in the quiet hallway, the only light coming from his work lamp. I was holding a piece of molding steady while he fitted it into place, and when it finally slid home perfectly, we both laughed with relief. We did it, he said, and he was so close I could feel the warmth of him. Good job. You did it. I just held things. You did more than that. He was looking at me with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. Mason, I need to tell you something. Okay, I whispered. I like spending time with you. A lot, more than I should probably admit. And I keep finding excuses to keep you around because I don't want you to leave. I started explaining every little detail of my work just so you'd stay longer, and I know that's probably weird, but I can't help it. You make me want to share this stuff with you. You make me want to share everything with you. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. That's not weird, I said. I've been making excuses too. I don't actually need to check on the renovation progress every single day. I just wanted to see you. Yeah. His voice was soft, hopeful. Yeah. I took a breath, gathering my courage. Luca, I've never done this before. I've never felt this way about anyone, and I'm scared because I don't know what I'm doing, but I really like you. I think about you all the time. I can't stop thinking about you. I think about you too, he said. And then he reached up and touched my face, his palm warm against my cheek, his thumb brushing my jaw. Is this okay? I couldn't speak, so I just nodded. And then he was leaning in and I was leaning in, and we were kissing in the hallway at midnight, surrounded by wood shavings and the smell of lemon oil. His lips were soft, and his beard tickled my skin, and it felt like everything I'd been waiting for, without knowing I was waiting. When we finally pulled apart, we were both smiling. I've wanted to do that for days, he admitted. Me too. I just didn't know if you... I trailed off, still processing what had just happened. If I, what? Liked guys? Liked you? He smiled. Yes and yes. Very much yes. We stood there grinning at each other like idiots. And then we kissed again. Longer this time, his hands in my hair and mine on his waist. When we finally stopped, he pressed his forehead against mine and laughed softly. I should probably finish cleaning up, he said. But he didn't move away. Or you could come inside, I said, surprising myself with my boldness. We could talk. Or not talk. Whatever you want. I want that, he said. I really want that. We went into my apartment and we did talk, curled up together on my couch. We talked about what this meant, about taking things slow, about being honest with each other. He told me about coming out in college, about his family's acceptance, about past relationships and what he'd learned. I told him about my confusion, my late realization, my fear of being wrong about myself. He held my hand and told me there was no wrong way to figure out who you are, that sexuality is fluid and personal, and no one gets to define it but you. I'm glad you're figuring it out with me, he said, kissing my temple. I know this is new for you, and we can go as slow as you need. What if I don't want to go slow? I asked, and he laughed. Then we won't. But Mason, there's no pressure. I like you. I want to be with you. However that looks, whatever pace feels right. That night, he stayed late, and we kissed on my couch until we were both breathless, and it felt like coming home to a place I'd never known existed. When he finally left, around 2 a.m, I stood at my door and watched him gather his tools, and he kept looking back at me with this smile that made my heart ache in the best way. I'll see you tomorrow, he said. You better. The next few weeks were a revelation. We spent every evening together, and I helped him with the restoration work, learning the craft while falling deeper in love with the craftsman. He was patient and kind and funny, and he made me feel safe enough to explore this new part of myself. We went on actual dates, to restaurants and movies and a woodworking museum that he was adorably excited about. We held hands in public, and every time I felt a flutter of nervousness, he'd squeeze my hand and smile at me, and I'd remember that this was okay, that I was allowed to be happy. I came out to my parents over the phone, my voice shaking, and they told me they loved me no matter what. I told my best friend, who said he'd wondered but didn't want to push. Slowly, I built this new understanding of myself, and Luca was there for all of it. Supportive and patient and absolutely sure of us, in a way that helped me become sure too. The restoration project was finishing up, and I dreaded the day Luca would complete his work and move on to the next job. But one evening, as we were sitting on my couch, he said, I've been thinking, what if I stayed in the area, took on more local projects? I could get a place nearby. You'd do that? I asked, hope rising in my chest. I'd do it for you. For us. He took my hand. Mason, I'm falling in love with you. Actually, I think I've already fallen. And I don't want this to end just because the job is done. I love you too, he said, and it was the easiest truth I'd ever spoken. I didn't know I could feel this way about anyone, and then you showed up with your tool belt and your passion for old wood, and you changed everything. He kissed me then, soft and sweet, and I felt like the luckiest person alive. This man who saw beauty in old buildings and historic craftsmanship had seen something worth restoring in me too, had helped me uncover who I really was beneath all the layers I'd built up over the years. The restoration project finished, and Luca moved into an apartment 2 blocks away. We settled into a rhythm, me with my design work and him with his carpentry, both of us building something new together. And sometimes, when I watch him work on a new project, running his hands over old wood with that same careful attention, I think about how he let me watch him work that first day, how he started explaining things just to keep me there, how that simple act of sharing his passion opened up a whole new world for me, a world where I finally understood myself, where I finally felt complete. I never thought I'd fall in love with a carpenter, or that falling in love with him would mean falling in love with a part of myself I'd kept hidden for so long. But that's exactly what happened, and I wouldn't change a single moment of it. Not the fear, not the confusion, not the late nights in hallways surrounded by sawdust, because all of it led me here, to him, to us, to this life we're building together with the same care and attention he gives to his restoration work. And just like that old walnut molding from 1924, what we have is solid, beautiful, and built to last.